It's green. It's just on.
I'd like to call to order the meeting for August 15th, Brandywine Heights Area School District. Could we please rise to the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Could I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Eisenhart?
Here.
Mr. Hoffner?
Here.
Mr. Hohenschild?
Here.
Mrs. Hume?
Here.
Mr. Reinauer?
Here.
Mr. Sheets?
Here.
Mr. Stubitz?
Here.
Mrs. Wallizer?
Mrs. Wallizer mentioned she is not able to make the meeting this evening. She is out of town.
Mr. Wagner?
Here.
8 present.
Thank you very much. Moving on to recognitions. Mr. Pottinger.
Thank you. We have a obituary minute to read. An obituary minute is an opportunity for the board to recognize past employees. This one happens to be one of our former math teachers. So if the board does not mind, I will read this. Whereas the Board of Directors of the Brandywine Heights Area School District acknowledges the passing of a dear friend in education, Mrs. Violet M. Schaefer, on July 12, 2022. Whereas Violet Schaefer served in the school district with dedication and excellence as a middle school math teacher for a total of 32 years from 1967 to 1999. Whereas Violet Schaefer's commitment to lifelong learning, devotion to students, and record of excellence in educational and community endeavors will long be remembered and appreciated. Whereas her passing is marked by a deep sense of loss to her family and friends in the district, and whereas the Brandywine Heights Area School Board would like to publicly recognize the extraordinary life and record of service of Violet Schaefer, now therefore be it resolved that the School Board of Brandywine Heights Area School District officially honor Mrs. Violet M. Schaefer for her role in improving the lives of countless students and citizens through her contributions to education, public service, her family, and the community. And it further be resolved that a copy of this resolution be spread across the official minutes of the school district this 15th day of August, 2022, with the copy sent to her bereaved family. I'd also like to recognize that the family in working through the funeral arrangements wanted to set up a memorial, and they actually wanted to give back to the school district. So they have a memorial set up to give specifically to the food bank in the intermediate middle school. That's held in the guidance office where kids can go in and get snacks. Those that are in need, those maybe that just didn't have a snack to bring in, and get food to take home on the weekends or during the school day. And so far, $300 has been raised to purchase food for that food bank.
Very nice. Thank you. Public comment. Anyone like to? Hearing none. Board of Directors report. Can I get a motion in a second, please?
So moved. Sheets. Second right now.
The first item under the Board of Directors report is to approve the minutes from the June 13th, 2022 meeting. That was the last time we were together. Are there any additions or corrections that need to be made in those meeting minutes? Okay, none heard. We'll move on to policies. The first 4 policies are second reading policies. Those were presented in June, and they're up for a second reading now. Once they get approved tonight, those will become official policies of the school district. The second set under C is the first reading of the policies, and I'd like just to touch on a few of them, specifically 237. That's the student use of electronic devices. That policy in particular was adjusted. The wording of that policy before was the words used was prohibitive, that technology was not permitted within the school system. Knowing the world that we live in now, knowing where cell phones are, knowing that we probably all have a cell phone in our pocket on the table right now, we changed that, and now the wording is the board encourages the teaching of the appropriate use of electronic devices by students during the school day in school buildings, on district property, on district buses and vehicles, and during the time under supervision of the district. It further says that the board prohibits the use of electronic devices in locker rooms, bathrooms, health suites, and other changing areas at any time. So there is a clear delineation. We've worked through this process. We worked with the teaching staff as well to come up with a good process to help ensure that we're teaching students the proper use of cell phones. And so when students are out in the cafeteria, when they're in the hallways, completely good time, purposeful time to can have their cell phones. When students are in the classroom and instruction's going on, obviously that's a time when we do not want to have the cell phones out unless it's for an educational reason. But we don't want to have students distracted by notifications, by checking their phones, being on their phones, engaged in maybe ear pods being in and not listening to instructions. So that's the change that's happening there. I think it's a very proactive change. I think it is, instead of being a reactive, prohibitive process, we're working to teach students, because ultimately in developing this, my goal for students is that they learn how to use it. They know when the appropriate time, because a lot of these students, particularly in high school, are working. And so they have to learn that time when to have their cell phone out, when not to have their cell phone out. And when they leave school, the high school in particular, they're going to go on to college or career, and they're going to have to know, again, the appropriate use to use a cell phone. So if we can put that into a formal process, that is ultimately our goal. So some tweaks that's going to happen within the school system, not too many, but particularly during instructional time, cell phones will be away, and students should not be on them or engaged in texting or checking notifications, that sort of thing. Any questions on that one?
Is there a age that we don't allow cell phones or do allow?
So in the elementary and intermediate school, students have them, but they really shouldn't be out for any significant reason except beginning of the school day, end of the school day. Really, what I speak to in terms of cafeterias, and that starts in the middle school and high school.
And are they going to be like discussed with in the beginning of the year? Like, when is an appropriate time? I know you kind of mentioned you're working with the teachers on.
Yep. So great question. The rollout plan is that both the two principals, middle school and high school principals, are going to meet with the students. They always do that at the back to school meetings, the first or second day, and then they're going to go through that process with them. Tomorrow we have a back to school presentation with all the staff, and I'm going to talk with all the staff about expectations as well. Just so that everyone knows. And so the expectations, it's a 4-tier expectation. If something happens, the teacher gives a verbal reminder, explains why when they're teaching, the student should have their cell phone out. If it happens again, then it's a phone call home to the family. Verbal reminder again, phone call home. If it happens again, same thing, verbal conversation, and then a phone call home again from the teacher. If it happens a 4th time by the same student in the same class, then now it's starting to become a discipline issue. And so that's when they would get turned over to the office for more of a disciplinary reaction to it. But it's a purposeful progression to get to that part with family involvement along the way. The next one that I'd like to just note is policy 605.1. That's district initiated real estate tax assessment appeals. This is a new policy of the school district. At the June meeting, the board had discussed working with our solicitor and our legal firm to come up with the policy, and so we did. The limits that are set on here is if the property would exceed $2,000 or more of the current fair market value based off the tax assessment. So there's limitations that would be permitted for this policy to go into play. And then it further goes on to say, if an appeal would happen, it would have to be by a motion of the school board to approve that filing for a district initiated tax assessment appeal. So there's some clear delineations and processes here in terms of dollar amount, as well as the board approval to proceed with any kind of tax appeal that would happen. So that's a new policy. I want to make sure you were aware of that, and specifically those guidelines, what I was just citing there is on the back of the policy, page 2, under the second paragraph of guidelines, just to make sure you're aware of the board of directors there.
This only kicks in when there is a sale of a property. Is that correct?
It could kick in at, I guess, at any point.
Yeah,
Building permits.
Yeah.
I think this policy essentially, Ben, correct me if I'm wrong, essentially is telling us as the administration to present something to you saying, hey, this has occurred. We would like to essentially go after and have it reassessed or looked at. But I think at any time we're legally allowed to question any sale, honestly.
I'm sorry, I don't think I quite got all of that. In other words, is somebody going to be monitoring all of the assessments, reassessments, sales, and what have you for the district, or do we do that ourselves? How does that work?
So we get a county report monthly,
right?
showing all the transfer taxes. And that kind of gives, what it sold for, what the assessed value was. So all we have to do is really eyeball it. Just kind of look at it.
So again, I go back to the very first sentence. The district, not the first, the district should review the information of all real estate sales within the district. So we're talking about sales. Now, you mentioned something about building permit or what have you. I mean, the building permit would be for a new occupancy or be a building permit for an addition to an occupancy. How would that work?
That's what happens typically. Then you get assessed on that addition. If you put a garage on or you add square footage to your house.
Right. But in the end, isn't it the county that does the assessment? So we would have to wait until the county did this, and we would be basing our procedures on that assessment,
Correct.
correct?
Yep.
Okay. And then if it exceeds $200,000, we would have the option to put this in motion.
Yeah. So at $200,000, I guess the business office would present, or the administration in general would present to the board saying, hey, is this something we want to, proceed with? And we'll give you a motion to approve or deny.
Okay.
Mr. Hefner can also give you guidance in regard to whether or not someone who decides that a property owner who decides that they want to, whether it's commercially or residential, based on that appeal, whether or not that, depending on the price, whether that's something that you want to get involved with or not. And this will give guidance to the administration to come to you and question whether you want to get involved. So that's the threshold that you're looking at.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hefner, to your point, we'll take a look at that specificity about sales and maybe make it something of the wording of county initiated tax reassessment, something along those lines.
Yeah, I mean, the county is the driving force there when it comes to the assessment of the property, because they're the ones that send out the assessments or create the assessments based on the county assessments for the county tax.
Mhm.
So we're going by that assessment. So I'm assuming then that would be the first assessment that we're looking at.
Yep.
And then if there's any additional building or what have you going on there, the property owner would receive assessment from the county, which would say this property is now worth this much. At that point, we look at the dollar figures that we're talking about here to see if we wish to proceed with what we need to do to have that reassessed.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We're saying the same thing. What I'm saying is in the policy, I think we should change it just specifically just as sales right now.
Okay.
And I think it should be broadened to your point. You brought up a really good point there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Excellent. And then the third one in order that I'd like to talk about is 626.1 travel reimbursements for federal programs. This is a policy that was on the books. We have to have it specifically because it says federal programs, because we have federal programs and received grant dollars from the federal program. But basically everything that is in this policy that says travel reimbursement procedures on page 2 and 3 are good procedures to have. Ones you wouldn't necessarily have in a policy, but we have to have them in policy now. And so that's what the major change is for this policy, and why there's a lot of specificity is because this is what is asked of per federal government in the guidelines and grants. Other than that, gifts, grants, donations, and then the other three properties, really no significant changes in those policies. Those are just part of the annual review process. As a reminder, we're going to a 6-year cyclic process to always look at our policies. And so those four in particular are now up for review. Finally, the last piece on here is the approval of the district health and safety plan. We are required every 6 months to approve a health and safety plan. So while we kind of out of the pandemic, we still have to have a health and safety plan while we have the ESSER dollars in place, which we have those for another year. So every 6 months that will just get renewed. No changes to it. Just as a reminder, there's no mask requirement. There's no quarantine. Those were lifted, and those subsequently have been pulled out of our health and safety policy. The only thing it has on there is if someone's positive, that they would quarantine for the 5 days. That's it. Other than that, we're up for committee reports.
All right, moving on to committee reports. Mrs. Hume, DCIU.
Good evening. The BCIU doesn't hold a board meeting in the month of July, so I have nothing new to report. I'll have plenty new to report next month.
Perfect, thank you. BCTC, Mr. Sheets.
BCTC did not have a meeting in July and nothing new to report.
Moving right along. BEITC, Ms. Del Guerco.
So we as well did not have a meeting. Our next scheduled meeting will be September 29th.
Alrighty. Policy Committee, did Mrs. Walliser give you anything for that or COLA?
No. Likewise with COLA, no meetings over the summer. One will be occurring in the fall. I was just trying to find a date real quick, but it didn't pop up. So, but one will be occurring in the fall. There'll be 4 throughout this school year. And in terms of policies, no updates besides what's in front of you tonight.
All right, strategic planning and goals, Mrs. Eisenhart.
Nothing to report.
Negotiation and compensation committee, Mr. Sheets.
Nothing new to report, however, just to give everybody a heads up, the next BCTC meeting is going to be August 24th at this campus.
Thank you. And building and construction committee, Mr. Pottinger.
Just to bring the board up to speed with the building construction committee, we've met several times over the course of the summer here to evaluate the. Remember back in the end of June, we had a presentation from Brewer Garrett, our partner UNESCO company. The board committee has reviewed that process, has reviewed the different projects, the costs associated, and has prioritized those projects with the available funds for the building, for the remaining kind of third phase of our building project. The goal was to have a plan presented to the board this evening. That will be delayed at least until the next meeting in September, specifically because the scope out here at the stadium. If you remember, we had looked to do a scope project of a stadium upgrade at the high school, as well as a stadium upgrade here at the middle school. The cost of the high school to be able to make it accessible without even touching the field was really chewed up too much of the dollars available. So we've reshifted the focus to be here, and the board has been seeing pictures of what it might look like if we made this more of an enhanced plaza area, gathering area, and really invest in creating a nice space here within the middle school. And so because of that, we've refocused the shift within Brewer Garrett and asked them to create a little bit of a different scope than what they had presented to us originally. So we're working through that right now. We want to make sure we have solid numbers and a solid plan before we finalize any decisions on other projects and really come to the board with the package deal of here's what we'd like to do, here's the reasons, here's the priority, and here's the financial pathway to pay for that. Any questions on that?
Any additional questions or comments from the board? Hearing none, can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Eisenhart,
Yes.
Mr. Hefner,
Yes.
Mr. Hohenschildt,
Yes.
Mrs. Hume,
Yes.
Mr. Reitnauer,
Yes.
Mr. Sheets,
Yes.
Mr. Stubitz,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner.
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
All right, moving on to business and operations report. Can I get a motion in a second?
So move Sheets.
Second right now.
All right, so this evening under the Business and Operations Report, items A through E are the recurring financials. Just to point out for those of you who are new at this time of year, the bills reports, those are basically for 2 different fiscal years at this point. Last year ended June 30, but we have kind of a 60-day accrual period. So kind of right now that $7 million, that's common. We do spend a lot of money this time of year because we're paying bills that came in from last year, a lot of tuition agreements, transportation, whatnot. But we're also buying a lot of supplies going forward, prepping for this school year. So I just wanted to kind of point that out to you guys. And then also the financial statements, you'll see them through May 31st. We have our audit in September, so you won't have any concrete June numbers from here. And that actually, they don't come out until December. I would say end of September, we'll have a pretty good ballpark of where we came in last year. And and we'll report that back to the board. But just to kind of give you guys a heads up of what's going forward. Under item F, we have special education pupil services agreements. These are routine agreements that occur annually. We have the communities and schools for social work services at a cost of $20,000. That is really part of a grant program that they offer us. Item number 2 is a contract for services with Children's Center for Treatment and Education, Beacon Light Behavioral Health Systems. That's an annual agreement with them. The next one is also Capstone Academy for a district. It's an agreement for a student at a cost of $87,000. The next one is part of the ag program. This is to pay for one of our students to attend the agriculture program at Ole Valley School District. And then we go on to curriculum and technology. Number 1 is to approve an agreement with Ingenuity. This is the virtual academy. This is for coursework, I believe at the secondary level for grades 6 through 12, at about $90 a student. And item number 2, this is going in with our, kind of conversion in systems for our food service software and our SIS. So this is a fee of $885 for them to do an integration between the two systems so that they can communicate. Next, we have facilities and maintenance. This is an annual agreement that we have with Long Swap Learning Center. All conditions are the same as they have been historically. The only change is that we did increase the custodial, the hourly rate that we charge them, simply for the fact that we did increase the custodial wages for our staff to help recoup those costs. And this is a renewal that it's for our dental insurance. Again, similar to our health insurance, we're kind of riding that wave. Less claims during COVID. So there's sort of a surplus in funds. So our premiums actually are decreasing starting January 1. So our costs will decrease slightly. We should see that kind of even out or probably increase in the next year or so. So the next one is J. This is the one that we did not approve in June, postponed to August. This is the 22-23 food service. Well, I would say J and K are kind of connected. This is the approve the breakfast and meal and lunch meal prices. As you will see, I'm recommending that we do not increase the meal prices for next year, simply for the fact that we actually will probably run a surplus if all things materialize, despite the increase in cost. We are getting some grant money, about $30,000 for supply chain assistance from the state. They did increase the claim rates. We'll get 40 cents additional per lunch reimbursement and 15 cents per breakfast. So I would say, just with the economic times for our families, that we do not increase costs at this time. And then item K is to approve the food service budget. Food service budget, the annual cost would be $722,000. That is basically about $5,000 over last year's budget. The major factors, salaries and benefits were, the big cost driver. But we actually saved, I would say, about $50,000 on our purchase services, and that is our food service management company that we use. This year, we budgeted about $52,000. We've only used $16,000. We've actually brought a lot with Mrs. Kowaleski and I in-house versus, utilizing them as a contractor. So that's helped offset those costs. Then I think that's basically it. Obviously, the cost of food has gone up, but I'm looking at a projected surplus of about $50,000, which I think in years, say next year, it'll probably, things will get a lot tighter, so we'll need that money. So the next one, item L, these are the co-ops that we use for food service. We actually added CAFCO, that is out of the Lancaster Lebanon IU on for this year. Typically, we just use SEPA and Tri-State. A lot of co-ops actually had no bids for a lot of commodities. So we just kind of expanded our, availability of resources. So you'll see grocery, bakery, bread, ice cream, milk. There was no award. So their state actually advised that as long as we don't exceed $250,000 in milk purchases, we can use our local vendors. So all the Berks County schools are going to be using Clover Farms. Tea, paper, and supplies, they stay the same as prior year. Item M is to approve the current roster of bus drivers for Brandywine Transportation for the 22-23 school year. They are all listed. And then item N is the 1-year extension to the service agreement with ARC Point Labs. They do our drug and alcohol screening. They have actually not provided us with an increase since we have utilized them. But this year they are charging us an additional $2 per test. So that would be the first increase. And that's all I have.
Any discussion, questions from the board?
Couple of questions, Mr. Wagman. Right above item K on the screen there, that paragraph right above, you'll see it says current pricing is now, and then it's sort of blank behind the national targeted pricing. Do we have an update on what that number should be?
So that actually should have been pulled. There was actually a waiver saying that we did not have to abide by that this year. Otherwise, we would see an increase in food prices. So I believe
It's
Is it-
not in this updated one, so it must have been.
board agenda is different than the public agenda. So, but we're displaying public agendas.
The one on this screen, behind Mr. Pottinger still says, X dollars.
Yeah, I'm projecting the public agenda,
Okay,
which is.
This is, the board, and
Okay.
the board, it's not on.
I think
Okay.
that forgot to get pulled out.
so that sentence should be scratched, that we don't have an answer to that question.
It's been, we don't have to abide by it.
Yeah, because normally there's a paid lunch equity memo that you have to fill out, and it determines whether you're required to increase lunch prices. So kind of in agreements with most of the schools this year, they actually waive that requirement. So you just sign off that saying you'd propose not to increase prices. We're aware, that we should have, but we're not. So that's why we're not required to do that piece.
All right. And then just in terms of sort of consistency, there's a couple of these items where cost is not included. It's probably referenced in the linked to document. But in other cases, the line item includes what the total cost is. I would just request that if possible, we be consistent and try and include wherever we can the total dollar amount that we're voting on for both the board agenda and the public agenda. There may be times where you don't want to disclose that for competitive reasons or something. I don't know, but it seems to me that, like, for example, under F, item 4, the Ole Valley School District, without clicking through, it's not clear whether when we say yes to that, if there's a cost to the district. So I don't know if, could you just answer that question quickly for me?
So I
imagine
believe
there's
it's
not.
about $17,000. I can
Oh.
double check.
For one student
Correct.
that Ole is charging us.
They don't,
Ole does not allow a student to attend just for their ag program. You have to fully enroll in as an Ole student. And so it's essentially like paying a cyber charter school. Because they are an official CTC as an ag program, we can't say no to it essentially. We also have a partnership with Kutztown, and Kutztown is a lot more flexible. So they'll allow the students just to come over for their ag program and then still do the courses back here with Brandywine. So that obviously greatly reduces the cost for a student. But unfortunately, in this situation, the student wanted to go to Ole because of a specific program, but there's no flexibility in terms of, well, just take the ag program there.
And the student drives that decision as opposed to our administration?
Because because of the CTC piece of it, yes.
Okay.
Because that program was different than the program that Kutztown offered.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's $17,018.10. So it's essentially our state certified tuition rate that they charge us.
Okay. And then under item H1, the Long Swamp Learning Center. So you mentioned that the custodial fee was increased, but what is the total rent payment that we'll receive on an annual basis from that offering?
1,400 for AM and 5,400. Oh wait, yeah.
Yeah, it's $16,047.
Oh, total, including custodial. does that price, it's not increased, just the custodials increased? Did their prices increase for the children to go there? Do we know that?
That I do not know.
I don't know that, no.
Just maybe something to look into. Every rent, there's a increase across the board, so.
And so this is a 1-year rental agreement through,
Yeah, we renew this annually with them.
I would echo Mrs. Eisenhardt's suggestion. Particularly if they've raised their cost to students, it seems reasonable that we would be in, commensurate with that.
Okay.
It's certainly kind of us to keep rents flat, and we appreciate their partnership. But if they're not being as kind to their customers, then we're missing out on an opportunity.
Wouldn't we have to raise the rent on anybody that would want to use our property? Like we'd have to raise rent on a baseball mat club, Toppin Soccer Club.
Are those fees increasing also? If those fees?
Better?
They align with
Can
our
hear you.
facilities use schedule.
Yeah, this kind of is outside the facility use schedule because it's every single day.
Correct. We're giving them a volume discount. But
Yeah.
I mean, realistically, they do 2.5 hours in the morning, 2.5 hours at night. We charge about $6 per. That's 5 hours times 6 is $30. It's arithmetic, right? So, I mean, realistically, we're charging them what we're charging everybody else, and they're paying their fair share. I don't think we're really necessarily being kind to them in the sense of, because all of the entities that utilize our properties, they're all charging for something, right? Whether it's the basketball club, the wrestling club, soccer club, whatever.
Well, is the Long Swamp Learning Center a nonprofit or is it a profit organization?
I believe that they are either a nonprofit or a not-for-profit organization. They're actually through the whatever the UCC church is on the hill.
501c3.
Probably.
If they're nonprofit, I wouldn't disagree with you.
Yeah.
I assume they were a private entity that makes a profit, that has a P&L.
Yeah,
Makes a
no, it's
profit.
like a Montessori or KinderCare or
Yeah.
Goddard or anything like that. This is, local community church trying to provide, childcare services.
Yep, it was just more the use facilities increase for everyone.
Yeah.
All the time. So it was just more making sure that we aren't losing out.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Other questions or comments?
Are we, there's no longer the free lunch program this year, right? Are we seeing problems getting the food again this year, do we think? It'll still continue to be,
It'll still continue.
even with the $50,000 surplus that we had, it's not necessarily the price, it's what's available.
Correct. It's not so much the pricing. It's more so being consistent. You can plan your menu and then you can call US Foods and then they don't have it. So you can change menus. So it's kind of one of those. I mean, Christy from Carol Gilbert Consulting, she's been really good on top of it as far as helping us design the menus of what she knows is readily available and also affordable within. So we're not obtaining huge losses with the prices that we're charging. So we're hoping to stay consistent.
And then like these ones with the stars, we have to stay with those companies. Is that what? Like you mentioned something like we have to. I don't remember the wording you used.
Cooperative.
And we have to use those products.
Yeah, for the most part. And I mean, basically they are US Foods or all the major people that you would utilize just because of the volume we're required by the state and by, if we use federal funds with that grant that we have with the surplus, we do have different purchasing requirements that we have to abide by.
Mm-hmm.
But we also get a discount.
Yeah. Our school lunch is just declining over the years. And I know that we're struggling with getting things in, but it's becoming a topic among parents and kids. So I think that it's something we really should keep an eye on, just the quality and what we're serving our kids.
And I would always suggest that was a conversation we had today. More a la carte items because the managers were actually here today. They'll be here tomorrow. They'll be here Wednesday. Just 'cause opening up the kitchens. But I mean, I would, if the kids are going to want to eat, they're going to eat what they like. So if it's something that we can find that's in compliance, with the regulations, obviously, feedback, helps us make our decisions. So.
Yep.
See, let
No,
us know.
I get it. It's hard, but I only can speak from my personal experience. Kids who used to beg to buy lunch now don't want to touch the lunch. So, and the only thing that's changed is, in my mind, is like the supply of things. So I don't know if that's
So,
what is affecting it or not.
if there's something that they're looking for, I mean, please relay that information to us.
Nicole, what would the budgetary cost be to continue free lunch for the kids?
Just pulled this number.
Just ballpark.
I would say it's going to be about $500,000.
About $500,000, because do we lose federal funding at a certain point there because we take over paying for everything? Like we don't get reimbursed for free and reduced
Well, that's about
if we don't charge, pardon me.
correct.
We don't get reimbursed anymore for free and reduced.
And we do if
We
we were
do.
to take over, if we were to pay for all the kids' lunches.
Oh,
The last 2 years we've had grants that
Yeah.
everybody's had to
that was
fund.
circumcised due to COVID.
Yeah.
Sorry, I misspoke. It's about 180.
So $180,000 budgetarily, if we could find $180,000 in wiggle room in the next budget process, we could go back to offering free lunch and breakfast for the kids.
Yeah, and we would just have to urge the families that are eligible for free and reduced, because that tends to drop off,
Okay.
which obviously would increase our costs because we're not able to get that subsidy back.
Okay. So it sounds like a twofold thing: finding budget process and then public awareness campaign to make sure parents understand that if they want free lunch for everybody, the people that qualify for it need to make sure they apply for it.
Correct.
And that 180 was including the reimbursement for free and reduced.
Correct.
Interesting. Thank you.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, could I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Hefner?
Yes.
Mr. Hohenschel?
Yes.
Mrs. Hume?
Yes.
Mr. Reitnauer?
Yes.
Mr. Sheets?
Yes.
Mr. Stubitz?
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhart?
Yes.
Mr. Wagaman?
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Thank you very much. Superintendent's report. Can I get a motion and a second?
So moved, Eisenhower.
Second Sheets.
Thank you.
So under superintendent report this evening, we have the approval of the student handbooks for this coming year of all 4 buildings. Under item B, in your packets this evening, there's this document. Tomorrow we have a kickoff, as I mentioned earlier, with all the teachers coming back, and one of the things we're going to do is highlight programs. And so this was put together to highlight programs. It's actually our computer science pathway. And it goes into what those 4 programs are. And in that packet goes into detail of what is involved in each one of those programs. I thought it was perfect timing in terms of what Mr. Reed, the teacher, put together for the students and really for the faculty tomorrow, but specifically for the board. So you can see what the computer science pathway program is, because on the agenda under B is the approval of the final course, which is that capstone programming and technologies course. So that is what is on the agenda for that curriculum approval. But again, I thought this was a little bit more impactful for a summary of what's in front of you and what the program we've been able to build at the high school in terms of that computer science pathway over the last few years. Moving on, under item C, we have the approval for the United Way to run the Set Ready Set Read program. Just a reminder, that's where we bring volunteers to work with our elementary students that need a little bit of additional help with reading. We partner them up with a volunteer from the community to do some of the reading, to do that reading support. Item D was to receive a grant from the United Way. It was a $5,000 grant to help fund Camp Spark, which we ran this year with about 130 students that participated again this year for free. So that was a great way to offset some of the costs through the grant, and we're very appreciative of the United Way granting us that grant. Item E is something we're really excited about. It is the opportunity to expand our pre-K options. This will be an opportunity to put 15 students, 3 and 4 year olds, in a pre-K program in our elementary school. We already have a partnership with the Berks County Intermediate Unit where they have a classroom. This will be a second classroom, and they'll run in tandem and collaboratively work together to help our students. Because ultimately, these 3 and 4 year olds are our students. They'll transition to the elementary school, and so it's a great way to help engage them, ensure that we have good quality teachers. They get a free snack, they get a free lunch, and then they're also involved in the programming in the school with the transitions. And so when they get into kindergarten, it's just that smooth transition instead of being the first time in school. It is completely free to families that are meet the eligibility criteria. And at this point, we still have about 5 openings left. So if anyone knows any families, please pass the word on. We're trying to fill the enrollment by August 31st for the official timeline for the state. But we will be starting our program in tandem with the start of the regular school day of August 23rd. So again, super excited about this. It is a great investment for our community, a great investment for our young children. And finally, as part of the budget approval, when that budget went through, the state somewhat surprisingly added 2 grants to each school district within the state. And the one grant is for physical safety. The other grant is for mental health safety. And so we received $120,780 for physical, as well as another $120,780 for mental health supports. How we target and intend to use those dollars is to upgrade our surveillance system within the school district. At this point, we're thinking the high school, but we're going to see how far the money stretches to more of a web cloud-based surveillance system. The technology out there is amazing. You can, if you are looking for a student in a striped shirt that happened to be blue and red, you can target that student and it will track them throughout the day. So if you know a student was wearing this shirt and left, let's say it's an elementary student, and left and didn't, you're not quite sure where they went. Did they go on the bus? Did they go in car pickup? The security camera can actually follow them and track them, so you know exactly what door they walked out of. You can do it. There's also systems to add to this where you can do vape detection, so you can put that outside or inside bathrooms, so you can tell if students are vaping. There's also ways to track and make alarms on doors. So if a door is open, it'll send a signal to the office to notify them that this door has been propped open for security purposes. So it is a really robust system, definitely worth the investment. The other one is mental health, and what we're looking to do there is expand, or we want to put that money into staffing and expand that as a guidance counselor, social worker, and that's one of the criteria that we can use the dollars for. So we want to make sure that those go back into people to help our kids. So that's where we plan on using these dollars. The reason we have it on the agenda, not that we weren't going to inform the board anyways, but we have to specifically have the board approve the uses for the grant as part of the grant requirement. And the grant submission is due August 31st. So that's why we wanted to make sure this was put in front of you this evening to vote on this. Finally, under informational reports, the superintendent reports there, the team put together a good report there. Just one note that's not on there, we had some closure with some of the parent comments that came out specifically about our foreign travel trips with EF Tours. There was some concern about the non-refundable deposit that was connected to that trip. And EF Tours has been wonderful to work with and graciously has decided to refund the families in full, including the non-refundable deposit. And so in the next coming week, 10 days, those reimbursements will go back to the families to make them whole. Even the families that already received a reimbursement minus $500, they'll get the additional $500. And one of our key goals was to make sure that this was unilateral. There's 13 students in total, and we want to make sure whatever was agreed upon was a fair and equitable for all students, and this process is. So again, we thank EF Tours for their partnership and willingness to help our families out in this situation. The final thing I just want to make note is we have our enrollment report. This isn't completely settled. I would say dust is still settling on this, but right now we're sitting at 1306 for our enrollment. We did reduce a second grade, a third grade, and a fifth grade from 5 teachers down to 4. In those grades specifically, second grade has a class size of 20.75. Third grade has a class size of 21, an average class size, and fifth grade has an average class size of 22.75. So even with those class teacher reductions, class sizes are still very, very good. The other class sizes are about 17, between 17 and 18, with fourth grade being at 20. So good, really good class sizes at our elementary level going into the start of the school year. One other statistic I'd just like to share with the board. We've been talking about this increase of free and reduced lunch. I think Mr. Sheets is probably this increase in poverty, I should say, not free and reduced lunch. We measure it by free and reduced lunch, but this increase of poverty, and Mr. Sheets, is probably your comment about continuing to offer free meals. Right now in kindergarten, 39% of the students are at the poverty level. We have in fourth grade 38% and in eighth grade 39%. And when you look at the poverty level, and forgive me, I wrote it down and forgot to bring it with me, but for a family of 4, they're living at about $50,000 or less with that family income. So the poverty level is pretty low to be eligible for this, and it just exasperates if these numbers are this high. That's kind of where our families are living right now. So I just wanted to make sure the board was aware of that, because it's one of those changing demographics. We've been talking about it, we've been tracking it, and it'll fluctuate through the school year, particularly within the first 30 days. As Ms. Delguerico mentioned, with the food service program, there's a 30-day grace period that if someone was previously eligible, they're already eligible for the start of the school year, but then they have to reapply within this first 30 days. So we'll see some fluctuation on this, but at this point, that's where we are with enrollment and some statistics with class size and poverty. Sheets, I'll turn it back. Mr. Wagman, I'll turn it back over to you.
Whatever you want to call me.
Yeah, sorry. I looked at you and it came out.
Any questions or comments?
Follow up on the EF Tours piece. That's certainly good news for those 13 or so families. Can you just clarify for the district? The district back in the day had purchased vouchers to help smooth the way. What's the status update on where the district stands in terms of getting whole?
Great question. So, and I happen to have the document right up in front of me. So thank you. Just as a recap, when COVID hit, we had foreign travel that was about to go the week COVID hit. So we pulled back. EF Tours did not have a cancellation policy at that point, and the board that was existing decided to reimburse those families and take on that credit essentially. So we do have credit for students that were intending to travel at that point, and all those families would have lost all their dollars. So again, a huge gracious gift by this board, but there is $37,960 of credit sitting with EF Tour. The plan here is to look to do travel again, specifically this spring and maybe next year as well, with the goal being that we go to a single country destination, so we don't have to worry about borders, and the European countries still have a lot of different mixed rules, and it's very hard to get across borders, particularly with some of the COVID things. So if we can go to one country in particular, it can keep us in one spot and do maybe a little bit of a shorter trip in terms of duration. And then hopefully what will happen is once a student signs up, they'll keep track of that. And then once we meet this criteria, they'll buy the credit back from us, and we'll get a check back to the school district to cover this. This has been, as of even today, just reaffirmed with EF Tour to make sure our dollars match with what they have on record, and they do. So great question.
So that amount is roughly enough for at least 10 students.
Correct.
Roughly at $3,000 or $3,500 a pop.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then just one other really minor suggestion on the computer science pathway. Super exciting that our district is offering this as a new curriculum item, and props to I was going to say Professor Reed, but Mr. Reed for doing all of the hard legwork involved in this. As I look at the course names, Intro to Computer Science, that's very clear what we're doing. AP Computer Science Principles, And then you move on to number 3, AP Computer Science A. And then you move on to 4, which again is a capstone course and it talks about what's there. I would just encourage us to be a little more clear. Instead of calling it Computer Science A for year 3, call it, when you read the intro, it's all about object-oriented technology or Java programming. So I would encourage us to call it that. It may help intrigue kids to want to take it if they understand it better. It certainly will help parents understand what their kids are taking. And remember, on our transcripts, we print those course descriptions. So as our kids compete for spots at colleges and universities and have to submit their transcripts as part of their application, I think if it said computer science, object-oriented technology, or Java programming, it would be a lot more powerful and understandable to the folks who are reading and judging those applications and transcripts than just something generic like computer science A. Maybe there was a reason why it was so generic, but short of hearing the reason, that would just be my feedback, helping position our kids to present themselves in the most powerful way.
Yeah, honestly, that's something we talked about a lot, that exact thing, but we ended up naming it after the AP courses that they're aligned with. So that's ultimately why we made that decision, because we thought those titles would be more universal to colleges and universities.
Okay, so you're saying because it's an AP course, then we're sticking to the naming principle because there's leverage there.
Because on the other side, if they see the transcript and they know that student did take AP computer science, they know then what went into that, because that's the test they set for.
Okay. Okay,
But that was absolutely a conversation we had, because I'm not in love with those titles as well.
right.
But there was a lot of conversation about that behind the scenes.
Okay, all right. And then just to clarify, dual enrollment. So dual enrollment is for AP Computer Science Principles and AP Computer Science A, but not for 1 and 4. Okay. Thank you.
Anything else? Yeah, I wanted to mention here for Laura in her absence. She just had a message she wanted to kind of get on record about her concern about this. This is, I guess I should phrase it by going back to the enrollment. Sorry, kind of jumped around here. About her concern regarding the second grade class number sizes, given the fact that a decent portion of those children are on the free reduced / lunch socioeconomic disadvantage kind of category. And they are a higher number per class. Kind of added to the fact that those were the kids that started during COVID. So I was just kind of passing that along to get that out for her.
Yeah, what kind of support are we adding on the backside for some of these classrooms?
So right now, specifically second grade, we're at 20.75. So I think that is a really good class size number. That you would be hard pressed to find a lower one within the county, I would say. That is a really good class size number. In terms of supports, though, that's a very good question. We do have the intervention specialists and the Title I teachers. So that is a group of four different staff members. Just going through my head, 4 different staff members just at the elementary school working to support our students.
Mm-hmm.
And then with Mrs. Kircher taking over some of her work with the curriculum world, tied in to now people services, we put together a whole program to work with intervention specialists and classroom teachers to help really prescribe a process that if a student is struggling, here's what we're going to do. If that's not working, step 2, we call it tiers. Tier 2, here's the next step. We're going to layer in more support. And then tier 3, if that's not working, then we maybe need to look more towards the special ed lens. Maybe there's some more specific learning disabilities that are occurring there. Obviously, that goes with a lot of data tracking. I'm oversimplifying. It goes with a lot of supports.
Yeah.
It goes with a lot of programming, but that is the pathway in a very more prescriptive way to make sure our students are getting supports within the elementary school with the classroom teacher as well as those other resources of those 4 teachers.
Yeah, they are just the highest with students who have been identified with the IEPs as well. So just wanna,
Yeah, they're 24% right now.
Yeah. as long as there's plans.
Definitely.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, can I get a roll call, please?
Mr. Hohenschildt,
Yes.
Mrs. Hume,
Yes.
Mr. Reitnauer,
Yes.
Mr. Sheets,
Yes.
Mr. Stubitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhart,
Yes.
Mr. Hefner,
Yes.
Mr. Wagman.
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Personnel report, can I get a motion in a second, please?
So moved, Eisenhart.
Second Sheets.
Thank you.
So going through the personnel report, we have some resignations that have occurred over the course of the summer. We have specifically, I'd like to just point out two losses that to the district. Mrs. Moser, who's been with us for several years, she's a graduate of the school district, but a great professional opportunity for her to grow in a neighboring school district. She was acting as our behavior specialist this past year, and then Mr. Geist. Mr. Geist is in the back corner there. Mr. Geist is going to be transitioning from the athletic director position and moving back to his family in Maryland and having some of those professional changes as well in his career. So we wish him the best of luck and thank him for everything he has done within the school district as the athletic director, bringing purpose, bringing vision to the department with a clear direction for our coaches and our students. So, Mr. Geist, thank you for all you've done. Mr. Geist has just a few days left, so we're squeezing one more board meeting out of him. He is actually done on Thursday, and so Friday will be the transition. Just so the board knows the transition plan. There is an assistant athletic director. She is awesome at what she does, so she's picking up some of the pieces. And then between the high school principal and assistant high school principal, they're going to be floating in to give that administrative support throughout the day as well. So that's the temporary plan. We had 25 applicants for the position, and so a really strong pool. Right now, because there's so many and really good quality ones, we are going through some I'll call it video interviewing, some review process right now to streamline that, with the goal then over the course of 2 weeks, the next 2 weeks after this week, to do first and second round interviews and hopefully have a candidate selected by Labor Day. So in a weekly update this week, I'll send a message to the board. If anyone is interested and wants to be part of that interview process, let me know, and definitely invite you to be part of that. Change of status. We have a couple changes of status under B. These are more internal moves of staff members. And so there was a lot of shifts that happened over the summer with some resignations, with that opened up positions. And then because that opened up the position, the staff member wanted to go to that role, which opened up their role. So it was this huge domino effect that happened. And really, these are the shifts that happened that are in front of you with all the different teacher moves. Under appointments of professional staff, we welcome several new employees. First off, Mr. Ostrowski. Mr. Ostrowski is our new high school assistant principal. He's been with us now 2 weeks officially.
Yeah, officially.
Yeah, 2 weeks officially, and doing a great job. He's had a chance to do ninth grade orientation, meet the students, get connected with the staff, and so really starting to fit in wonderfully with Mr. Jinich and the high school students and high school staff. Similarly, we had the chance to hire an assistant principal at the intermediate middle school, and so Mrs. Michelle Ward is joining us from the Wilson School District. She is not official, but day one, unofficially, she joined today to be at locker practice because she knew students were going to be here. We're still working on some transition timelines with Wilson, but we're really excited to be out having Michelle work directly with the intermediate school students, staff, and specifically Mr. Riggins. So we're excited to have both of them join us. We have a new high school guidance counselor. Mr. Vivada resigned and took a new position. He was our former high school guidance counselor. So Mr. Becker, looks like Beaker, but Baker is going to be joining us as the new high school guidance counselor. So we're really excited to have him join. He brings a neat background he was actually working at a university. He was working in a school district, but most recently working at a university. So he brings that college connection to it and that transition for kids into post-secondary, which is a really neat attribute. And then we're really lucky to be able to pull a physical education teacher in from a neighboring school district. He's a parent in the school district, and he is going to do nothing but rave reviews about Mr. Miltonberger, but he's going to be joining our physical education staff at the elementary school. So that's a neat addition. And then finally, we have the appointment of Mrs. Pottinger for the pre-K counts teacher. Again, that connects to the grant, and we're excited to have that grant opportunity for the school district. For our support staff, we have a food service substitute, Ms. Stoll. We have a recess cap aide, which is awesome. Miss Solenberger. It works out great with her schedule and her professional career, and for us as well. We're also looking to hire a business office benefits secretary, and that's Mrs. Merkel. Mrs. Merkel is joining us new. We've reshifted how we're doing payroll within the business office, and so payroll. There will be no longer a payroll personnel. That payroll position has been disseminated within the team that Nicole has built. She realized there was a lot of talent there and could disseminate those roles to those people. In doing that, that also meant that there was other pieces that had to get picked up. So Mrs. Merkel is going to kind of be that catch-all to help with benefits and other pieces that the other staff members that are now doing payroll were otherwise doing. So good visionary piece there. It will definitely save the school district financially, and it will be hopefully a much more smooth process when all the dust settles out of that. And finally, we have the approval of Miss Renner, who will be now the high school attendance secretary, taking over for Roseanne Kuiperice, who's been here for numerous years previously. And sorry, one more thing. This is a neat opportunity. This actually came a suggestion from the board last year, hiring students as custodians. So we did that last year. We did it over the summer, and we're going to continue that. It worked great, and so we have 6 students that we're going to be bringing on as custodial help during the school year. That's a pretty cool opportunity. Long-term subs. We have a long-term sub for a Spanish position, Miss Bates. We have a long-term sub for a sabbatical for special education. That's Miss Biondo. And then we have Mrs. Conrad filling in for the intervention specialist role in the high school. And then most recently, in fact, just approved, Mr. Choliner, who is going to take over as artistic support long-term substitute. And seems like he is going to be a great fit. Culturally, understands kid-centered, understands special ed inside and out, understands the programming. And 1, it's super hard to find a special ed teacher. 2, even harder to find an autistic teacher. And 3, to find a male autistic special ed teacher is really rough. So great to be able to bring Mr. Trolliner on. Any questions on those as I catch my breath?
Just a quick question on the business office org changes. Our job descriptions, is that what's linked to here? Was the board provided with updated job descriptions for these new positions?
You know what? I don't know if I did provide them to you. We created them, but I know that's some of the things we've been trying to get to the board. I'm not sure if we actually put the job descriptions on here or not. I will go back and check, and then we'll make sure that we did create them for the job postings, so they're available. I'll make sure those get out to everyone.
Okay, yeah, much appreciated. Particularly if there's new
They are.
positions being created in the organization, and in either new or new and then replacing something else. That it's really helpful to try and understand the big picture from a org chart perspective. The
Mrs. Yoon, I don't mean to interrupt you, but Mrs.
They are
Kleinfeld just said that they are.
Yeah, they are linked on here.
Okay, great. I my sign in is not working, and
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm not able to follow along myself here. So
I'll still make sure you get them.
thank you. I
Yeah.
would appreciate that, Mr. Pottinger. And then just a quick question on the separation of the payroll and benefits specialist. Is that not someone we just recently hired? Okay. So maybe we need to be updated offline on what happened there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions? Under 4 co-curriculars, we had the approval of the athletic coaches for the fall season, the event staff workers for the fall, and then the paid instructional non-athletic essentially co-curricular appointments. Just this question was raised to me: why are we approving event staff when we approved? Part of the goal when we had an assistant athletic director was that we were going to get away from event staff, and that was going to be some of the financial savings. Having someone that was going to be paid as a salaried person and then be there in the evenings. With Mr. Geist moving on and only having one person, we decided to put the event staff back in just to help cover things during the fall time here. Support staff substitutes. So we have a few support staff substitutes. We're very thankful for that because that is very hard to find right now, and we're very appreciative of those those individuals willing to be substitutes for us. No leaves, and then under other personnel, we have a few items. Some of these are cleanup things. Some summer days for our guidance counselors are the first few items. Ms. Haas has been our virtual academy long-term substitute. She did some work over the summer to work with our students. We have the approval of support staff and manager handbook, as well as the professional staff employee handbooks here. We have the approval of all Brandywine employees, teaching staff members to serve as homebound instructors. We've done this for the last several years. And really the idea is that if a student needs homebound instruction, instead of going back and saying, well, this person needs it, this allows any teacher to be able to go in and do homebound instruction. So again, that's a process we've been doing several years and works really well. This doesn't happen a lot. It actually, I don't think it even happened last year at all, but it just is that safeguard to be a LO staff member to do that. We have the approval of the salary for Mrs. Reichert. She is the business office specialist. She's one of those staff members that is taking on more responsibility, and so commiserate with that responsibility. There's a recommended increase for her pay.
So it's an increase.
And then we have finally 9, the transition for the mentors for all our new staff members. And some of those new staff members are ones that already went through induction, but we still partner them up with mentors just so that they feel comfortable and can get them to be used to the quote unquote Brandywine way, because each organization has its own unique nuances as you go through employment. That is personnel. A lot of shifting parts over the summer, and it was a little lengthy, but I thought I'd just kind of hit the high level things with hopefully the just amount of right of detail. Any questions?
2 quick follow-up questions. So on the mentors, GH and I, all one person, Mrs. Snyder,
Yeah.
mentoring the 3 that are listed there. So is that 3 full-time mentorships? So 650 times 3, or is she dividing her time?
Mr. Volker, I'll look to you because I know you, but I believe it is 3 different unique mentors.
And that's on top of a full teaching load for that individual? Have we ever had a mentor have 3 new employees?
We've had 2.
I know we've had 2.
I'd have to double check to see what she did last year, but it was more than 1.
2 of them are Kutztown reading specialist interns, so they're working together through the program and fulfilling their requirements with that jointly, but still separate and unique. And then with Mrs. Levin, the according to something similar that Mrs. Snyder did last year when Melissa Smith was in for maternity leave. She did the same thing, kind of going over a lot of the same stuff at the same time, but still creating time to meet between new staff members.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense
And
in terms of
there's
grouping.
A smaller pool also of teachers that have their reading specialist certification that
Mm.
would be with us for longevity.
Gotcha. Okay. And then on the item on my sheet, it's number 8. You indicated there was a salary increase to 44,000. Can you provide just a little more financial information? Help us understand where the employee was and what we're being asked to increase them by?
Correct. I can speak to this. So she was at 40,000. She was essentially our business office specialist of so sort. Her primary focus was purchasing. She was essentially new to school districts. I would say over the last year, she's, come leaps and bounds and exceeded all expectations, as far as not only purchasing but just numbers, from a even like a human resources, just a customer service aspect. So when we didn't have a payroll or a benefits person, we haven't had one since May now, except for that little interim period that we did. She has really kind of been my support as, I just need someone to pull data, all the time cards that we have to do, all the hourly employees, check stipends, extra time that teachers put in. And she has honestly kind of taken charge and been able to do that on her own. Aside from all the other things that we've kind of thrown at her, she's kind of that go-to resource when all hands on deck. So that's why we're proposing the increase. She's the one that's going to essentially start the payroll process going forward. And then it would go over to Rachel, who's going to kind of do the tax implications, the higher level of PSERS reporting, and be that additional level of expertise and oversight. And then the final approval will kind of come through me. So that's a change in how things were done previously versus there was that one position and just one level of approval. So now it's kind of going to be a 3-step process. So kind of shift some things. She's kind of taken on some benefits, preliminary pieces as far as, ID cards, just answering basic preliminary questions. So she's kind of, her scope has really expanded. So
Sounds like it. Okay, so we're being asked to approve a 10% salary increase from 40 to 44.
correct.
Okay. And again, I would just ask that moving forward that the board be provided offline with a little pitch like that, so that if we do have questions, we can ask them in exec session or more privately as might be appropriate. And then my final question, just in terms of like overall personnel. So in the national news and the local news, we've been dealing with this teacher shortage for years now, frankly. And so I think it might just be appropriate. Can you just provide sort of a Brandywine perspective on how do you feel like we're doing in relation to that sort of larger issue, short term and then longer term?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you would ask me 2 weeks ago, it would not have been the same story. A lot of things came together within the last 2 weeks, and I feel like we are in a great position, particularly with this autistic. We had 2 autistic support classrooms open, and those are one of the 2, however you want to say it, but one of the most important jobs in the school district, because that's a very difficult role to fill. That's a difficult role to do, and then it's because of the certifications, it's hard to find someone. And so we have an internal staff member, Miss Mellon, who is willing to shift over and do that in the intermediate school. She was formerly our speech teacher, and so she works with the students already and will be awesome in that role. So she's going to do the intermediate middle school, and then with this hire now for the elementary, that's going to be great to lock in that. The only opening we have right now is a math teacher. We've been posting for that. We had 1 applicant, and unfortunately, it wasn't quite where we wanted it to be. So that role is, in terms of the importance, it's super important, but in terms of day one importance, it's more set up to be an intervention role to put more emphasis and supports for math students. But it's not like that has a caseload that if we don't have, there's going to be a group of Algebra 1 kids walking into the classroom without a teacher. So we are set, fully staffed, that this was an added support, and then we're paying for that through the ESSER dollars. So it is grant funded, so we can hold off and kind of purposely make our decisions there of how we want to move for that. That's really our only opening position, aside from the athletic director one right now. In terms of substitutes, again, that's why I was very thankful for our support staff substitutes. That's really hard to find right now. I think anyone in employment knows how challenging it is right now. Our teacher substitutes are kind of holding steady where they are. Last year we had about, I'll throw a number out there, about 15 that were consistent. And we have that again. We do have building subs locked in for each building. So we have someone that's going to be there every day. That'll be our go-to and be the first one to get called. And then kind of those ancillary ones. That number used to be like around 40 to 50. So it's challenging, but overall, I actually feel really good about staffing compared to where we were. It's a great question.
Good update. Thank you.
We'll
Good
take
work.
it, right?
Yeah.
Any other questions, comments? Hearing none, can I get a roll call, please?
Mrs. Hand,
Yes.
Mr. Rightnour,
Yes.
Mr. Sheets,
Yes.
Mr. Suvitz,
Yes.
Mrs. Eisenhart,
Yes.
Mr. Hefner,
Yes.
Mr. Hohenschel,
Yes.
Mr. Wagner,
Yes.
8 yeas, motion passes.
Thank you. Is there any public comment?
Mr. Wagaman,
Yes, sir.
I'd like to go back to the superintendent's report. I should have brought this up at the time, but I'm just curious, we have no virtual academy full-time or part-time students, or does that happen later?
That will get filled in a little bit later.
Mrs. Honage, is
Mrs.
she
Honda,
still
you know
with
where
us?
we're at
right?
right now, just kind of off the cuff.
So it's a little early to tell, because we typically get the requests as school approaches.
Okay.
So in the next week, I'll have a lot better numbers, and I can update that live document for you.
Okay,
But currently, hard to say, we're still working out, having meetings with parents. So the reason too is, so when students choose their schedule at the high school level at the end of the year, sometimes we get requests that change. So trying to confirm or switch schedules is happening right now. So the numbers are low right now, but I assure you, they'll be about average.
okay, well, I didn't see, I thought maybe you retired.
She's not
Don't
allowed.
give her any ideas.
She is not allowed.
I'm grateful that she's still here. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I'll speak for Mrs. Honich. She's an amazing lady. My daughter Natasha just took Algebra 1 over the summer, and anytime I needed help or anything, she's totally available. She's an amazing person to work with, so I got to give her full credit
Thank you, Mr. Right now. Very nice.
to Ms. Honich.
Any other comments? Hearing none, I do need to make an announcement that we had an executive session prior to the meeting in regards to personnel and negotiation, and we will have a brief executive session in regards to personnel at adjournment here. Can I get a motion in a second?
So move Sheets.
Second, right now.
Thank you, everyone.
Board members, if I can we'll just exit left.
Ah, cool. Uh-oh, uh-oh.